Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is Offrey Abundance. So in today's video, I'm going to be doing another run through for my Remember Who You Are African Ancestry Study Guide, Volume 1. Let me get that here. Have it in my binder here. So I've decided to go through and do another topic for this video. So in today's topic, I'm going to be going over this part of the book, which is page 44 and 45. And this section talks about healing. So this is what that looks like. There's a prompt here, a question, and then you're able to write down what your answer is based on your own personal experiences as a person in the diaspora. So I'm just going to read what it states here on this page. It states here, what if the one thing they're most afraid of is if you healed your trauma? So that's just one question they have here on the page, kind of, like an answerless question, kind of just provoking some thoughts there. What if people in our society who, are the oppressors and the ones holding African Americans inside of the diaspora and outside of the diaspora back were to see you responding in society as a healed individual who is not held under any stream of trauma, and how powerful that would truly be for our experiences. So I'm going to read here the prompt. So it states here, Nana, Dr. Patricia Newton, teaches that the impact of trauma lasts for 7 generations. If that is true, then Africans in the diaspora are still feeling the effects of slavery. We must break the generational curses so that our future generations can thrive, unencumbered by the past. Nana, Dr. Patricia, also teaches that shame is a luxury that we can ill afford. This means we should recognize the traumas that exist and focus on improving our mental health. So in this exercise, I'm going to read the question and then I'm going to discuss my answer and kind of why I felt like this was an answer that fit me and that was best suited for my understanding of this part of the study guide. So the question for this exercise is asking, what are some effects of enslavement that we still experience today? So my answer here was seeking permission or approval from outside sources that otherwise are not in any supportive position to aid you in healing. So that answer to me was basically scoped around the idea of saviorism, right? A lot of people seek their, their basis of um, finding relief in their struggle inside of people who otherwise do not care about your life experiences, lived experiences, your traumas, and past experiences. So I feel like there's a lot of that being shown in our communities within the diaspora. We're seeking, this help from these outside sources who are not even in solidarity with you as a person. I also added to that identifying the double dealing personage is critical to increasing the wisdom of ancestral guides. So I felt like, you know, piggybacking off of that saviorism kind of mindset, double dealing individuals can present themselves to be, advocates for your struggle and people who are standing with you. But then when you look at them and you see how they lead their lives, you notice that there's a double deal going on. There's one thing being stated, and then there's a whole nother thing behind your back. So I feel like being able to identify that double deal is very important as a person in the diaspora, not only to keep yourself safe, to keep yourself safe in your mental health, to keep your children safe, and, overall just to begin to cultivate those, ancestral guides that, are here to help us. Even, within the diaspora, there are, groups where we can seek, you know, um, help in for our mental health based around our cultural identities. And, you know, for me, I have definitely been looking into a lot of different online groups where, African Americans in the diaspora within the continent are coming together and cultivating together to cultivate that, kind of servitude, that sovereignty that is coupled together and it's not double dealed. So you don't have to really worry about them, you know, going behind your back and, making a double deal with something else and not presenting themselves as, you know, true. So I feel like it's really important to connect with those ancestral guides. There are a lot of elders who lead a lot of, groups online where they're teaching you about the history of Africa and teaching you about the different tribes and how they, seek that, solidarity with their own people and, were able to be understood with their own and not having to look outside of yourself in order to find the help that you are seeking. I feel like it is just something that is very important to teach our children as well. We don't have to, start hating ourselves and seeking things outside of ourselves to help us when the self-love is where you start. Your, identity is where it starts. Coming into yourself and doing the inner work is where you start, not going outside looking for someone, a superhero, someone to save you. The only outside source that you should be seeking is the help from, from God. So I feel like that ideology of, seeking help from the double dealers is something that needs to be acknowledged within the diaspora. So on the next page, this next exercise, I really like this one. This one has, a list for you to create affirmations for yourself daily, because what better way to train yourself into that self belief than to have something that a mantra or something that you say to yourself every day. I love, proverbs. I've stated that a lot here on my channel. I love African proverbs because they're very meaningful, short, you know, um, sayings and memos that a lot of Africans across the continent connect with, and they, can tell a story in 5 words, and it means something really deep. So these affirmations here, they just give you some examples. So I'm going to read this page. This is page 45. And I'm also going to read the prompt before the examples. So in this prompt, it states here, words have power. Choose the words you use wisely, especially those you use to talk to yourself, your children, and others that you care about. Affirmations are a tool that can help you heal. An affirmation is a phrase that asserts a truth in order for it to become an automatic thought. So that's just the rewiring, training your brain every day based upon these self, um, you know, soothing types of words that we have to learn how to reinterpret to ourselves in our own minds as persons within the diaspora. So it says here, create a list of affirmations and repeat them daily. So here are a few examples to get you started. So the first one, I love this one. This is a really powerful one. The strength and goodness of my ancestors are my strength and goodness. So it's something very simple. The strength and goodness of my ancestors are my strength and my goodness. So, creating that partnership between what is good with your ancestors being good for you because we are a part of them. So that's that idea of, like Islamically for, people within the diaspora who are Muslims, the Ummah. How can I connect with the Ummah? This is something that is a collective, kind of connector for, people in general. So your community, your Ummah, or, there are a lot of different words and different cultures that people use, Ubuntu, you know, the collective dealing, not the double dealing. Positive forces lead me on my life journey. To be African is to be beautiful, intelligent, creative, and resilient. I embrace my greatness. So I think that is something that's very important. There are a lot of words that people use in our, in our communities that are very divisive. One word in particular is something that a lot of, people inside the diaspora of the United States and, within the continent of Africa use that are very decisive, such as, for example, the simple word black. A lot of people completely segregate themselves from the word black because there is a misinterpretation of what that word represents for people. So one word can disconnect people from their ancestral, you know, um, connectivity. And I feel like those are things that have to be mentally shifted in our minds. Instead of saying what we're not, we need to recognize who we are and what we are and what makes us more alike than different. I feel like this is something that is really, a good tool for mental practice, for self actualization, for self realization, and actualization, all of those things. Those are the tools that are going to help you release yourself from the mental slavery, right? They always, talk about within the diaspora the mental chains that are still, you know, upon our minds, the control of how we see ourselves, what we see ourselves to be, or what we're told to see ourselves as less than, and later being treated as less than, when in reality we have everything to be proud of. Like it states here, to be African is to be beautiful. A lot of people have negative things to say about African features, African hair, all of these things. Once you release yourself from those streams of society's, deceiving double dealing of who we are and how they can mess with our mental health, then we can see ourselves into our ancestral, path, opening the way for one another and, basically bringing forth those codes that we should be tapping into, being intelligent. A lot of these ideologies, try to make it seem like Africans are just, bumbling idiots and don't know anything. And once you learn the history of astronomy and mathematics and all of these things that were already connected to the continent, you'll kind of hold yourself a little bit sturdier and stand a little taller because you can be proud that our people had a lot to do with a lot of, you know, creations in the world, and just understanding that we're not what they perceived us to be. So this is a really good study guide, like I'm, stating in a lot of my other videos. I will be going through this study manual here on my channel, so I will definitely have more topics to discuss. If any of you have any questions or want to kind of piggyback off of one another and talk about, these experiences, how it affects our children, what we can do to help our children self-actualize every day, what practices, what tools do we have, to help our African American, wherever we are in our tribal, DNA, and all of these things. How can we get our children to see themselves as beautiful? My tool of choice for my daughter is using the dolls that I buy for her. We self actualize. We make beautiful what otherwise is seen as non existent. So these are a lot of the self actualization tools that I started out with my daughter, just so that she can see what it is and we can actualize over it, and she can have that mental fortitude to get herself through this life when there's going to be a plethora of, forces against you to take away from your esteem of yourself. So if you enjoyed this video, I would definitely appreciate, 2 thumbs up, comment, rate, subscribe to my channel, and stay tuned for more of these topics. They're very deep, they're very gritty, but they're very much needed. And I'm definitely someone who is a supporter in the Pan African world and, within the diaspora. And yeah, I definitely appreciate, the subscribers that I've had for these last, couple of years. We're coming up on a new year. So, as I stated before, I'm definitely going to have a lot more videos with these topics and really, jumping into that immersive content and really just, trudging through all of these um, perilous topics that are holding a lot of people within the diaspora hostage in their own minds. So stay tuned. I hope you enjoyed this video. And as I'm always advocating for, my channel is a safe space for those in the diaspora within the continent. So there's not any hatred here for African people that will be tolerated in any way, shape, or form. I appreciate all of your support. Stay tuned for the next video. Thanks for watching.